right, Susan, shall we get started?
Let's get started.
Again, my name is Cindy for those of you joining us, and this is Susan, and we're going to get started. So today we are going to have a wonderful program on spotting birds, and there are some things that will happen throughout the course of the program. So what to expect today? There will be an opportunity for us to build observational skills, and towards the end of the program, we're going to be looking at birds and journaling. So we're going to have a bird journal. So if you have printed that bird journal, make sure it's somewhere close to you. We will be getting that a little bit later. And if you didn't print that bird journal, that is okay. Any sheet of paper will do. And you'll want a pencil or a pen with you as well. There will be times that we will be interacting with you as a community. You can turn and talk with each other. You can stop and jot if you'd like to do that, if you want to write stuff down. And then the only way that we get to hear from you today is through that chat box. So there are opportunities throughout the program where you can chat with us and let us know what you're observing and some of those questions that you have along the way. All right.
Ready to start?
Let's get started. So, where are we coming from, Susan?
We are coming from planet Earth and a little more zoomed in than that, from California, the Bay Area. There we are in San Francisco and Golden Gate Park, zooming into our favorite museum.
And we are coming to you live right inside of that museum. But let's tell you a little bit about what makes our museum quite special. So as you can see, there are 3 domes in this photo. We are a museum that has a planetarium, a rainforest, but also you notice that there's that green dome. What's really cool about that dome is that our roof is covered with plants. And we call that a living roof. We do also get some visitors aside from like people.
We get those bird visitors. We have actually had birds nesting on the green roof. We've watched hawks teaching their babies how to fly. Birds love that roof.
They do. And we would love to invite all of you to be our scientists, because it turns out that also what makes our museum very special is that we have hundreds of scientists that help us learn about the world that is surrounding us. So we'd love for you to be our bird scientist this morning. Now, in order to do that, let's all remind ourselves, what is it like to be a scientist?
Yeah. Maybe we should do a pledge.
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Let's do a pledge.
Okay.
So everyone, wherever you are, we'd like for you to raise a hand and repeat after Susan.
Today, I will be a scientist.
Today, I will be a scientist.
Which means I'll look at things very closely.
Which means I'll look at things very closely.
I'll think deeply.
I'll think deeply.
Ask questions.
Ask questions.
And I will listen to others.
And I will listen to others.
So that I can try to understand.
So that I could try to understand
the world around us.
The world around us. Congratulations. Thank you, Susan, for leading us that scientist pledge.
So let's go looking for birds.
These birds look familiar.
They do.
So the first thing we're going to be thinking about is what makes a bird a bird? Let's start off with that question and turn and talk with someone next to you. And if you don't have a partner, that is perfectly okay. You can let us know at that chat box. We'll be right back. All right. Well, let's all come back together, scientists. And what makes a bird a bird? Well, we started noticing that some of you, thank you for sharing your ideas, have beaks and feathers, birds fly. They can lay eggs. Some of you even mentioned about the bones and how hollow those
Yeah.
bones are.
Shape of the body, make nests.
Make nests.
Lots of good ideas on what
Yeah.
makes a bird a bird.
And just by looking at these birds, we could see those characteristics that you just mentioned. And these birds are very special to us. These are some of the birds that we have here at the California Academy of Sciences. And our biologists take really good care of them. And they have a very special place in all of our hearts. So if you ever get a chance to visit the California Academy of Sciences, you might be able to see some of these.
So these birds live inside the museum, but today we'd like to go outside. So let's take a look at some birds that we might find outside.
Yeah, so we're looking at two photos here, and what we like you to do is notice how are these birds similar and different. So take a moment to observe closely, turn and talk, or write down what you notice. All right, bird scientists, come back to us in 3, 2, 1. Now, some really great observations of these two birds. Some of them talking about beaks and legs, but let's keep those observations in our minds for a moment because we're going to switch over to a couple other birds and we're going to do the same thing. How are these birds similar and different? Again, take some time to turn and talk or write down your ideas. We'll be right back. All right, let's come back together in 3, 2, and 1. Thank you for sharing your observations, bird scientists. Susan, let's take a look at all of them all at once.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some really great observations. Oh, so you started noticing some of the habitats that they're in. Some of the birds have, yeah, one of them has a longer beak than others.
Looking at the size, a couple of them look quite small.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one has big eyes and the other little eyes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Coloring. Coloring is similar.
Yeah, the first two birds that we saw are larger than the last two birds that we saw. So there's some size differences for sure.
So this is all looking at still photos of birds, but you know, birds are so much cooler when you actually see them in action.
Absolutely.
So we have a video that we'd like to share with you where you can see some of these birds and some similar birds in action.
So this video does not have any sound. And what we like you to do is in wherever you are, if you have a partner or on your own, see what you notice and you can share your observations out loud. Go ahead and describe out loud as you're watching this video.
Love watching that video, Cindy.
It's such a beautiful video. Now, why don't we watch it one more time,
Okay.
Susan? Now, this time, what we'd like you all to do is see if you can find how many different kinds of birds you see. So we're not asking you to count all the birds,
Right.
like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like all the birds you see, but the different kinds of birds. And this time, again, we'd like you to count out loud wherever you are as you're finding those different kinds of birds.
Okay,
And we'll be counting over here too. Well, if you want to quickly let us know in the chat box how many different kinds of birds you saw, go right ahead. Thank you for those who have been doing so. And kind of similar to some of the ideas I had.
Yeah. So how many did you count?
I thought I saw 13 this
13.
time. I saw this video yesterday and I counted 12. So
Right.
I found one more.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually thought 12,
Mhm.
but every time I look at this video, I actually seem to count a different number. And it looks like there's a range from everybody that's dialing in as well.
Yeah.
Like I see 8, I see 12.
Someone found 19 different kinds of birds. And I'm sure that the more we see this video, the more we would probably observe closely and look even closer. We might find more.
Right.
Well, great job, scientists, for observing closely. Now, we've been looking at these birds in action. We're going to go back to those photos of the birds that we were looking at earlier. Now, we started focusing on some of those body parts when we described some similarities and differences. But now, we like you to make a prediction. Now, a prediction, it doesn't always have to be right.
It doesn't have to be right. And I like to think of it sort of as an educated guess.
So make your best educated guess on how these birds use their body parts to find food. We'd like for you to turn and talk or write some of these ideas down. Take a moment to look at these 4 photos and look at their body parts. We'll be right back. All right, well, thank you everyone for making your predictions. Let's all come back together in 3, 2, and 1.
So Cindy, we have another video here that actually shows these birds using their body parts as they find food. So we can kind of test some of those predictions and see what we see. Should we look at that
Yeah,
video?
let's take a look.
Okay.
Now, as you're looking at this video again, the videos we'll be looking at today, for the most part, don't have any sound. So you're welcome to describe how they're using those body parts with your partner and you could describe them out loud. All right, well, as you were watching that video, we hope that you were able to see how those birds were moving around in different ways. So we're actually, we saw small birds and big birds. So let's take a look at them together, and we're actually going to use some of the things that you were mentioning along the way as you were making those observations. And Susan's going to walk us through it.
Okay.
And Susan, if you even get a chance to name some of these birds, that would be great.
Oh, I'd love to do that. Okay, so let's take a look. There we have our long-billed curlew with that ridiculously long beak. And you can see he's probing way down deep into the sand, looking for those clams and maybe little marine worms for a good snack. Look, he's got almost his whole head down there.
And some of you mentioned that you saw a bird digging all the way down.
So this guy, his body part of interest is that he's got a really sturdy neck, really kind of a big neck. And he's also got a sturdy bill, and he can turn shells over, and he looks for food under those shells. His name is a turnstone.
That's such a cute name.
I know. And these guys are the western sandpipers, and they just scurry about on their little legs. They can move pretty fast. And they look for things not too deeply buried in the sand. But they can get a lot of food in a short period of time. And these guys with those really big eyes that some of you mentioned, those are plovers. And they use their vision to find food, often on top of the sand. And that's a snowy plover doing that little tap dance there. Maybe just shaking up the sand, trying to get something to come up so that he can nab it. Pretty cute.
One of my favorites.
And then this is a reddish egret that looks like he's kind of going crazy, but he's actually got a purpose to all of that madness. He's herding fish. So he's herding fish into one little area so that then he can grab one. And there he did, I think. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool. And Thank you, Susan. So
Mhm.
we've been looking at all these birds together with our community of bird scientists today, and we've been noticing that they are in an area where there's lots of water,
Mhm.
kind of like the shore.
Yeah. So all of the birds we've seen so far are at the shore where the water meets the land.
Mhm.
And so that shoreline can take lots of different, looks different in different places. So what we were looking at so far was Louisiana. That was a beach in Louisiana. This is a shoreline right near the California Academy, right on the California coast, the northern California coast. If you look at it, you can see it is the shore, of course, but if you look more carefully, you'll see that it's not just one habitat, but there's lots of smaller habitats in that photo. So I challenge you guys to look at this photo, look carefully, and see what smaller habitats you can find where birds might hang out. So
Yeah, let us know in that chat box if you see any small habitats within this large habitat. Yeah, so we're seeing up on the rocks, cliffs. So if you're not able to see the chat box and seeing what everybody's saying, I'm gonna read that out loud for you. The grassy area, the bushes, the dead grass, the top of the hill, yeah, in the sand, in the water. So you have all found by looking really closely at some of the smaller habitats that can be found in this big habitat.
right.
Thank you for sharing.
So this area here in California is interesting because some birds come here and spend a lot of time here or may live there year round. Other birds are coming here just for a few months. They might be migrating. So they might spend part of their life up in Alaska or way up north, and they might be just using this coastal flyway to get down to Mexico, and they stop over in California. Shorebirds particularly are famous for long distance flying.
How long are we talking
So
about?
thousands and thousands of miles, actually.
That's a
Yeah,
very
that's
long journey,
that's
and I'm curious, like, yeah, how do they prepare for that?
yeah. So this shows one particular bird, the Hudsonian godwit, and the migration flyway that it takes. It goes, you can see all the way up from, there's those red circles up north in Alaska and the Hudson Bay in Canada, and they fly all the way down to the tip of South America. That's actually 10,000 miles. So, and a number of shorebirds actually do this, not just the godwit. And they, like you were asking, how do they prepare for that? Because that's a pretty long journey, and it's sort of, you can think of it as being preparing for a marathon.
Okay.
But what they have some physical characteristics that are very good for long distance flying. These shorebirds do. One is their long, sort of pointy wings that let them sort of catch a tailwind and fly pretty far without actually without flapping. So they can do some long distance flying that way.
That's incredible.
So it's a body part that they use for flying. They also have a behavior that I think is pretty fascinating, which is when they are ready to migrate, like maybe move from Alaska and go down to the tip of South America, before they take off, they spend days and days eating and eating and eating and eating some more. And so they get hugely fat. You might call them obese if they were humans. They double their weight. And in order to carry all that extra weight, which they need that fat for energy when they fly these long distances. They also grow their muscles to carry that weight. And in those weeks before migrating, some organs get bigger, like their heart and the lungs, which they need because they're doing these marathons, right? But Some organs like get really, really small, like their stomachs and their gizzards get really, really small because they're not going to be eating for a while and they don't need those organs. So their whole body changes. And of course, once they take off, they're not going to be making a lot of stops for like snacks or anything. They have to go many thousands of miles, but they do make a few stops. So those green circles show places where many, many shorebirds will stop, even though these places are nowhere near the coast. So you can see there's one here.
Yeah, like in the middle
of South America.
Definitely not by the coast.
And in the middle of North America, right?
Yeah.
So if you went there at a certain time of year, you would see these shorebirds.
Which
millions
is very
of them.
cool, because I would be surprised if I was there and I saw them.
Yeah, I know. It's really fascinating. And this is a picture of one of the big stopover places. It's in South America. You might guess where this is.
Looks like the Amazon.
It is. It's along the Amazon River. So many, many shorebirds actually stop at maybe a little beach area along the Amazon River, outside from where all the trees are. There's another place where it's estimated that 7 million shorebirds stop here this is actually Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
This is the middle of a prairie. Who would guess that you would find lots of shorebirds there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
7 million.
7 million. That's a lot. And so they eat here, instead of eating like crabs and the things they normally would eat at the shore, here they'll eat insects and get lots of good food so they can continue their journey even further north. This is another area sort of in the west. There are a lot of very salty lakes that the birds will congregate at, will land and have a big stopover on their migration journey. And this, some California folks might know about Mono Lake is one example.
Right.
And another is the Great Salt Lake in Utah. So these are places far from the coast where shorebirds land.
Yeah, and it's such a great story, all the different habitats shorebirds need.
Yeah, and they really, if you think about it, a bird that is in California today, this exact bird could be in Mexico tomorrow. And so it really brings all of us, the whole community of humans together, because if we want to protect the habitats, we need to work together, because there's so many of them,
there's
right?
so many of them. Thank you for sharing that story,
you're
Susan.
welcome.
Now, since we've been looking at habitats, let's take a look at these 3 habitats, A, B, and C, and we're going to ask you to play a little game with us. Now, we also have 3 birds. We have a marsh wren, a pine warbler, and a cactus wren. See if you could match the bird with its habitat. Now, as you do that, ask yourself, why did I think that? Why did I think marsh wren goes with A, B, or C? All right, let us know. We're gonna ask you to let us know in the chat box this time. What are you thinking? All right, we're starting to get some responses. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing, thinking about why you're thinking that's in that. Like, what clues did you notice? All right, Susan, shall we put up those responses?
Yeah, let's the answer. Here's the answer.
So pine warbler, if you looked closely at habitat A, we have pine trees in the back. The cactus wren, you probably noticed the cacti in that habitat. And then that marsh looking habitat in habitat C, marsh wren.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern there. Looks like the names give you a big hint on where their habitats are.
And great job, bird scientists, for noticing all those patterns and those clues and helping you with our little game here. But we are going to now really use those observation skills that we've built together today. Now, Susan, I know you really enjoy bird watching.
I do.
And I know that you've had some time to even take a course.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of taking a year-long course with our chief scientist here at the California Academy. And he really helped me learn how to look at birds, how to record what I see. So this is a picture of some tools that you might want to bring with you if you go out to look for birds. And of course, there's a field journal that might help you identify birds. But probably more importantly, there's a notebook and a pen, someplace where you can either draw or write down observations. And of course, a pair of binoculars helps, but not always necessary either.
Right.
Yeah. So what I learned was what is important to write down if you're looking at birds. That's one of the things that we learned. And things that are important are date, time, place, maybe weather. And another thing that's important is the habitat that you're seeing. So in this case, this habitat is actually right outside the window of my house. Right. So
you didn't have to go too far.
I didn't have to go very far. I didn't have to go to the Amazon.
Right.
Right outside, I saw lots and lots of birds. And you can see the habitat here is just under some pine trees. And then we made observations. How many birds did I see? What did they look like? What did they do? So for example, maybe some were at a feeder, maybe some were interacting with each other. Just writing that down makes it very interesting. And then you can go back and look at what you wrote down later.
Yeah. Now, this is a good time to grab that bird journal if you have it printed, or grab a sheet of paper and a writing utensil. We'll give you a few seconds to grab that. It should be nearby. All right, so bird scientists, today we'd like to invite all of you to observe closely, but also listen carefully. So sometimes I know that when we're outside or when we're watching birds, whether it's outside or in a webcam, like we're going to be doing today in a moment, the sounds are also pretty helpful.
They are. Sometimes you don't see birds.
Yeah.
You really only hear them.
So we want you to focus on all the, try to use your senses as you're going along through this webcam. And we're going to go to a webcam, which takes place in Ithaca, New York, which is on the other side of the country for us.
Yeah, and the name of this place is Sapsucker Woods. I love that name. So let's take a look.
All right, bird scientists, finish up that last observation. We'll come back together in about 10 seconds. All right, we'll come back to us in 3, 2, 1. Well, we hope that you had fun watching that webcam, and I hope that you also heard some of those sounds. I know there were some really cool bird sounds happening as well.
Yeah.
Now, I know Susan wanted to share a little bit about some of the birds that you saw, and some of you were also mentioning what you observed. Some of you were already making some predictions, and maybe you had a bird journal, a field guide nearby.
Yeah. So yeah, I saw that a lot of people had identified quite a few of these birds. I saw blue jays. I saw some cardinals. We saw the female cardinal was sort of a light red or an orangey type color. And then the male cardinal came in, right? The bright red one. And there was a woodpecker. I see a lot of you saw a woodpecker. I think that was actually a hairy woodpecker. They have a slightly bigger beak than the downy compared to its head size. There were some mourning doves, definitely those big birds that looked like kind of like pigeons.
Yeah. And then the ducks in the back.
And yes, some of you guys really looked carefully and saw there were ducks
in that lake.
And hopefully everybody observed the weather, not exactly like it was here today in the Bay Area. Yes.
Now, you can at any point watch this webcam. And so there are lots of webcams, which are really fun to watch in case that you're not able to go outside. But we'd like to also share with you some of the other things that you can do as bird scientists.
So there are a number of different things that we can do. If we can't go to birds, just practicing, go to the actual live birds, practicing looking at birds through webcams is a great idea. But you can also find birds by hanging bird feeders just in your schoolyard or maybe at home, and that really helps birds because they can find food. You can also look up your local Audubon Society and join family field trips, and that's a great way of going out to places maybe near you, and going out with some people that really also know and love birds. We can record birds just like we did today, birds you see in a journal, or you can also use an app, a smartphone app. So a couple of those apps are eBird, that's used a lot to record what birds you see. Also iNaturalist, or there's another free app that you can download on your smartphone that helps you record birds. And the name of that app is Seek, and that's particularly for kids, actually. And you can also join others to help restore all of those beautiful habitats that we saw today.
Right.
Yeah.
You never know what bird might visit your habitat.
Absolutely.
So we do have maybe a minute to see if anybody had some questions. So if you have a question, let's see. I do have a question for you. Susan, have you seen a migration? Like, have you been in the presence of like so many birds and you realize it was migration happening?
We actually, we were in Arizona not too long ago, and we went to a big pond area in Arizona and saw sandhill cranes come in, huge flocks of sandhill cranes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah. So I see some questions here. What types of feed are in the feeder there in Sapsucker Woods? So they had a variety of different food because they were looking to attract a variety of different birds. So the middle one was suet, and that is what woodpeckers love to eat. And we did see woodpeckers there. And then there's also some Niger seed, which is often used for the smaller birds, like particularly finches love Niger seed. That was in the feeder on the left. And then on the right, I think there was sunflower seeds. There are, how many kinds of birds are there in the world? It's estimated that there are about 10,000 different species. That's a lot.
A lot.
All birds do not migrate. Many choose to just stay local.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So the smallest bird I've seen are the hummingbirds. So local hummingbirds that we see here are Anna's hummingbirds.
Yeah.
There's even smaller hummingbirds than Anna's. Yeah.
All right, we have time for one more question, Susan. I know some questions are coming in.
What bird acts the silliest? That's a fun question. Well, you know, that egret that we saw in the video, if you didn't know what he was doing, I would say he looked pretty silly.
I think the first time I saw that reddish egret, I wouldn't have imagined it's actually that move. It's like it's doing it to be able to grab that fish. So it's pretty silly to me from afar.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us today on Spot That Bird and joining us. We'd like to thank you all from California Academy of Sciences. Again, thank you and continue being bird scientists. Thank you for all your observations today, bird scientists. Have a wonderful weekend to you as well. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Cindy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.